Plebs grow up hearing,
you gotta run a node.
You gotta rent hash rate.
You gotta buy a cold card wallet.
You gotta defend Bitcoin from the scammers.
You have to pay Matthew Cratter $790 for Bitcoin University.
man, is it time to change the narrative? Our mental health is just as important as our node's health.
If you're having a rough time right now, reach out for help in the group chats. There is no reason to be broadcasting your crash out online. While a pleb node has no influence in forming consensus in the Bitcoin network, a pleb has influence in forming consensus in their community. Your node may not matter, but you do.
Yeah, welcome back to the Bugle Weekly. It's been about 2 weeks since the last episode, and in those 2 weeks, a lot has changed. A lot of security tests, the foundation of that institution, of this culture, has cracked and crumbled like a high rise in Caracas, Venezuela during an earthquake. And the cold card, I mean, we'll get into the cold card thing. It was a true emperor has no entropy moment. The most secure, the most safe, the most dependable thing to glaze and to recommend and to show off as a virtue signal of your careful consideration of your security risk profile as a self-custody hogger. It was the cold card incident, like I said, we'll get into it, but it was a change, is a vibe shift in the culture, in the industry. And then yesterday, the culmination of the DIP 110 reduced data, temporary soft fork, the pleb slop rebellion, the pleb nodes, the kayfabe, it all came to a head. The mandatory signaling began. The plebs forked off. They got 2 blocks. So congratulations to the Roughnecks for those. And now their nodes are bricked. I warned people, I said, you will brick your node if you don't stop running us this weekend. So the plebs have brick nodes. The culture is reassessing conventional wisdom, all the institutions that held it together, all the podcasts, all the podcasters, all the sponsors, all the hardware wallets, everything. All the rules, all the group chats, all the purity tests. And here we are. I thought I heard a sonic boom outside my window the other night after this cold card thing happened. And I think then what it was all the plebs that were stuck in the fourth turning, while many of us had joined the first. They were coming in like a Concorde, coming straight into the first turning. And I think it seems pretty obvious now, but we're all here. Everybody, Bitcoin Twitter, the big Bitcoin industry, plebs, hodler, what paper Bitcoiners, soup coiners, cypherpunks, we're all together now in the first turning. And I think you have to be kind of crazy to deny that, given the year we've had. And while this was all happening, so was Lake Satoshi taking place. And we have talked at length about Lake Satoshi and how good of an experience it is and how much fun we had last year. And I was unable to make it. But, we have to talk about Lake Satoshi, especially in the context of the time. Because Richard told me that everybody at Lake Satoshi this year, when the cold card hack happened, he told me that everyone was brave. He said they weren't too nervous. And most people were crashing out like crazy, or they were freaking out and they were nervous last week. And many people still are nervous. And it's okay to be nervous, but as I expected, nobody at Lake Satoshi was nervous because it's not the type of people that go to Lake Satoshi. I'm going to miss you guys. I miss you guys this year. I will be back next year. Miss you, Baba. Miss you, John. I miss you, Otis. Is Otis there?
Yep.
Yeah. And Rev, fundamentals. And if hey, everybody who was out there, chat, I miss you guys. See you next year.
Yeah, Lake Satoshi was a very surreal experience this year. It was very different. It was a when it rains, it pours situation. Literally, it rained quite a bit. when we were there. There were a lot of grumpy wives. They weren't happy with the rain.
Mosquitoes?
The mosquitoes were okay. They weren't horrible. But yeah, it was a very strange situation where there was some pleb slopping about BIP 110. Canute showed up and was walking around, really strutting with a lot of confidence. And then this cold card thing happened, and there were a handful of individuals that did end up going home and finding that they lost significant amounts of Bitcoin that I talked to. And that was pretty unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, it's one of these situations that, anytime you're somewhere and you're not able to be monitoring the situation, there's a significant situation going on, and you're just standing around talking with people in person who, also are semi monitoring the situation passively. It's a very, very surreal experience to have that happen. And definitely, I wouldn't say the vibes were low, but it definitely put a damper on the vibes. All of the combination of the rain and the grumpy wives and the cold cart situation.
Right. I mean, everybody knows that the group chat camping trip, the wives are grumpy in a bear market, right? And it doesn't help some of these, if your husband's, renting hash, betting on prediction markets and getting them all wrong, losing sats, and then their cold card gets hacked, it's like the wives right now are sick and tired of their husbands losing money or their husbands, savings losing money. And that is a real part of this. And it sounds silly, absurd on the point, but I don't know anybody who let their wife handle self-custody for their family who lost any money. And I think a lot of husbands need to take a look in the mirror and maybe think, like, maybe it's time to let my wife pick a hardware wallet. Because a lot of us take for granted how many podcasts we listen to and how smart we think we are when it comes to all the basics. We think we can just flip on YouTube and come up to our bookmarks of a BTC sessions tutorial on how to hook your cold card up to an Electrum server and use a spare wallet and, get all this stuff done, especially when you're nervous as hell and you think you're racing against time to save your family's future. And so it's, I think the solution is we need to take a more deliberate role in our lives for self-custody, but a lot of us should let our wives do it.
Well, I think I felt proud about the situation that we're in. Like, the only type of hardware sponsorship we've ever taken was from Office Depot Paper. Cold Card, offered us a sponsorship in the past, indirectly, I think, and I wasn't excited about it for a variety of reasons, but
we've been offered
anybody
before
that was running
Bitbox too, yeah, and others.
Yeah, I wasn't excited about.
I like the guys at Bitbox. I didn't know the guys I like Hongle D. I always got along with him when we hung out. But we can sit here and virtue signal all day long about why we never took sponsors. But at the end of the day, it was this show doesn't really work with sponsors. What we're doing doesn't really work with sponsors. So it's kind of like the guys who criticize Tiger Woods for cheating on his supermodel wife. And it's like, well, you're not getting the same amount of opportunities to cheat on your wife as Tiger Woods is. So for you to say that you are a more moral person, you have more moral victories than Tiger Woods when it comes to being a faithful husband, that's a little bit, it's just a little bit dishonest and disingenuous. This podcast is like sponsor repellent. Like, what we're doing makes it very easy for us to turn down sponsors because we don't have that many sponsorship offers. But that being said, it is a personal decision. A lot of people made it. I don't fault them for making it. I don't blame them for making it. But it is people are facing consequences. Their reputations are, in some cases, in dumpsters. on fire because of how they handled hardware wallet sponsorships and recommendations and onboarding their friends and family, yada yada, without understanding what they were. They didn't understand it themselves, and they were recommending it to other people. That is, people are just going to have guilt over that. You're not going to jail for this, but it is going to be something that's going to weigh on your conscience. And if maybe it doesn't weigh on your conscience, but if it doesn't, but if it does, you probably know why.
Yeah, I don't know. It just didn't sit right with me at the end of the day. I did an article a long time ago about how Mossad can infiltrate the supply chains and have exploding hardware wallets. And so I guess, the attack vector was different than what I, was researching or predicting. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just like one of those things that is difficult. We're going to see the content ecosystem and landscape change a whole lot. I'm not sharing this. I'm not sharing this to virtue signal in the sense of, oh, we're smarter or better, whatever, because I don't necessarily think that's the case. I mean, it's just, I think we got lucky with preferences, or it's just one of the benefits of the preferences that we have is avoiding these types of situations. But yeah, there's a lot of hardware wallets that are marketing now that they're, safer, more secure because they're simpler and they're advertising to the wives, like the BitKey, for example.
BitKey, that I was going to say, the BitKey, this is smart marketing, right? They're targeting wives, they're targeting common law wives, they're targeting the women, the type A women out there who know that this is where the women, I'm not trying to scold you ladies, but a lot of you know better than to be letting your husband manage the family's entropy. And listen, we're all facing this problem together. This is one of those things where a lot of people are going to be angry. They're going to blame others. They're going to blame the podcasters. Certainly NVK and CoinKite fucked up huge. But people are just going to be unwilling to or resistant to really just understanding that times have changed. We are like in this acceleration. For most of human history, people could take entropy for granted. You did not used to need to know what entropy was and that it was the arrow of time, the entropy in time and thermodynamics. This is what we learned in podcasts, 40 hours per week. You didn't have to know these things. Most people did not until Thursday of last week. Now there are frontier. We talked about this. We're pioneers. We're on the frontier, which means that we are on the frontier, potentially peering with frontier models powered by these Chinese clankers, and they could be trying to rip us off, or they could be trying to find vulnerabilities in our software or hardware wallets. And if we don't have enough entropy, we are fucked. And people are no longer taking entropy for granted, and they can't afford to. And if you got hit, or if you were just lucky, because a lot of people didn't have enough entropy and they just got lucky, all you can do is start to incorporate and get where you get more entropy in your life begins with 40 hours per week. That's where you start. That's where we're all starting. That's where we're coming back to if we've gotten away from it.
Absolutely. Yeah, entropy is incredibly important. And I think most of the people that got sucked into the BIP 110 stuff had extraordinarily low entropy. Socially, they had extremely low entropy from a podcast listening standpoint. They just didn't have a ton of context. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like almost, and this is, I think, important, to understand and talk about is it's a bad idea. I think it's a bad idea to have all your Bitcoin, if you have a significant amount of Bitcoin, in a single place on a single hardware provider. And this is kind of like an example of like, you need entropy for your custody solutions too. Not just in seed generation, but like probably in custody solutions.
If you have time to dilly-dally on your node, do you have time to dilly-dally on your hardware wallet or your software wallet or your multi-signature wallet or your paper wallet? I have no recommendation or suggestion for how people improve their self-custody because I don't know where they're at. I stopped even trying to speculate. All I know is if you got time, when I was growing up, I worked in restaurants. I was told if you have time to lean, you have time to clean. And people don't work in restaurants anymore. A lot of us are, we're raising families, going to work every day, or fiat mining, whatever it is. But if you have time to dilly-dally on your pleb node, on your start 9 pleb node, so you can virtue signal to all your little group chats about how much you believe Bitcoin is money, fine. But if you have time to do that, you have time to roll dice, add a little bit more entropy to your routine, to your self-custody setup. If you do that, I think you'll be in a better position than you were yesterday. And that's all you can do because, as I was saying, it used to be so much easier and safer to be a pleb. But now, there are clanker pirates all over the digital ocean that is the internet. And Cloudflare is not doing a good job of filtering them. Knots is not doing a good job of filtering. And it's our grandparents and our parents are getting hit by phishing, people calling on their phone. And plebs are getting hit by clankers in the group chat. And just don't make yourself a victim. You can't completely avoid it, but you want to have enough entropy in your life that these clankers are not going to be able to easily steal your future.
Yeah.
What
Well,
about? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, one of the responses that has been interesting is this, like, a lot of individuals saying that they're not going to self-custody after this. Like, they're like, oh, we can't self-custody anymore. We have to paper Bitcoin or whatever. And I think in, like, raw numbers of Bitcoin stolen, self-custody, or sorry, how many Bitcoin do you think speculatively, like maybe like 1,000 Bitcoin or a little bit over 1,000 Bitcoin swept from Cold Card?
Yeah. Last I checked, I think it was like 1,500. Maybe it's up to 2,000. I don't know. And it's also like, at this point, there could be 100 different people out there doing it. So, but the initial wave was about 1,000, 500 the first day, like 500 the next.
Yeah, the amount of Bitcoin that has been swapped off of exchanges, whether through accounts getting compromised due to bad security practices by the exchange or through phishing attacks or attempts or whatever, it's just like it is astoundingly, or exchanges going under, it's so much significantly higher than individuals that have been compromised in self-custody.
I think,
And
yeah. I just think that I'm not reading too much into this conversation or this discussion of people saying they're going to put it back on Coinbase or River or Swan or whatever. It's, to me, this is just like everybody knows an aunt or somebody they went to school with. Every time maybe they got divorced or they got broken up with by a man, they said they're giving up men. Men are just too much. They're too brutish. They don't understand them. This doesn't work. They are not meant to be with a man. And, some of them go out and be lesbian for a while. They get the Subaru, but they come back, whatever. It's just and most of them don't even go that far. It's just people are afraid of being hurt. And self-custody is a pain point or something that people see as being a potential pain point. And they're just trying to avoid being hurt. But self-custody is, it's not for everybody. You could say that it is. You could say anybody can do it, but there's still no evidence of that. There's still no evidence that just it becomes a thing that even the most hardcore Bitcoiners were, you could say that they were being lazy or that they were skirting their responsibilities, but it's like, maybe some people should ease into it. or make sure they take it seriously, or let their wife do it. But, so it's not my recommendation, but it's also, I think people are just, they're fed up, and they're expressing frustration, and they're afraid of getting hurt.
Which is totally a reasonable response through all of this. I think we continue to find out that we are on the frontier still. And many individuals want to feel like they are in a place of safety. They're just in
They want security. They want security. They want safety and security so that they can, whether it's focus on something else that they find more interesting or more satisfying, or if it's just, because they're lazy, they want to play video games and they want to feel secure so they can eat, hang out with their kids, whatever it is. People crave security.
They want Michael Saylor's promise of life doesn't have to be hard. So you should buy Stretch. Like that's why many people bought Bitcoin. That's why many people bought Bitcoin is they expected that it would be their like life raft off of the Titanic, essentially, of the financial system, which is, extraordinarily chaotic and volatile. And then they run into the situation where it's not the case. It's actually the opposite. They get in the life raft and there's a giant hole in the bottom and they're sinking. And these are absolutely the risks of, being on the frontier, but also living in the world that we live in. Of this, I think there's been this myth or fantasy of living in an incredibly safe world, and the world is incredibly unsafe historically, and the technology has made it a lot more safe, but things are chaotic right now. Like we're in the first turning, people are trying to build, they're jockeying for their positions, picking up the pieces from the fourth turning, and it's tumultuous for sure. But
I mean, this is where you get to a situation like we're at now, where some people have decided that self-custody is not for them. They're going to paper Bitcoin or custodial Bitcoin. Some of them are doing that. That is a movement. It is at least temporarily. Some people said I'm just doing it temporarily until I figure out, I listen to some podcasts and I figure out some new some new hardware wallets that are being recommended right now. And some people are saying, I'm siding with big Bitcoin. Big Bitcoin doesn't, I have to make trade-offs here. I have to not ask too many questions, but I make these trade-offs and I have a relative guarantee of security, or a relative feeling of security. And some people they're really glazing the red team. This, in response to the cold card security exploit, now the red team is going out and white hat exploiting other people's software and then messaging them and letting them know about it. Hopefully, I guess, to prevent these frontier model attacks that affected Cold Card. Craig Raw, who's not officially a member of the red team, but is the sole maintainer, basically, of Sparrow Wallet, found a vulnerability in BTC Pay the other day. And a lot of people apparently lost various, quantities of funds, like foundation devices. Nobody broke a foundation device hardware wallet, that their Lightning channel was empty. The whole company's Lightning channel is empty. And so I'm sure there's other stories. Uncle Rockstars he's dealing with the PR on that one and trying to help people. But this is scary. People are scared. They don't want to be the next victim. And so it's like, are you going to support the red team? Are you going to glaze Anthropic and OpenAI and say, until Bitcoin podcasters are given access to Fable and Mythos, what are we going to do? We're just going to pull our funds offline. We're just going to go with big Bitcoin. We're just going to go back to the banks because it's scary. So what will people embrace as the institution or the idea that promises security? That's going to be a big question coming forward. People are going to disagree big time on this.
Oh, people are already disagreeing. I mean, you've got Mechanic and Crater and a lot of the, BIP 110, Nazis out there saying that Bitcoin doesn't provide you security at all because it's a safe haven for spam, and Big Bitcoin has fully taken it over. A lot of, plebs promised that they would sell Bitcoin, they're bricking their nodes. It's, very tumultuous time where it's got to be a really hard time to be like a Gen X or a boomer, where you don't know how to use your iPhone and like surf the internet and have any sort of literacy. It's probably a good thing that Facebook isn't a forum for much Bitcoin talk, because they'd be pretty confused over there. But yeah, it is the question is what will provide you security? And there is a lot of disagreement on that. People thought it was AI stocks. People thought it was SpaceX. Jim Cramer saying it's Amazon right now.
And this is why this is part of what's going on here, is that people are their time preference can't get any lower. Well, some people it's their age, some people it's a medical condition, some people you just born with ADHD or something, but they can't they just their time preference is what it is, and it can't change. And Bitcoin has not made them rich. Bitcoin has not made them fulfilled in the way that they imagined it would, the way that they hoped that it would. It hasn't been what they wanted it to be. And so now they're talking about it failing. They're trying to say that it failed. And the reason it failed, they're trying to say it failed for everybody because it failed for them. Or trying to say it failed. This was supposed to be the perfect money, and we ruined it. It is broken, decentralized. And it's a lot of it's projection. But so now they're willing to get desperate. They're willing to fork. They're willing to hard fork. They're talking about literally hard fork to fire the miners. And people who we fought next to in the battles against the shitcoiners from 2021 to DeFi Summer to meme coin mania, like plebs and veterans who we served together through all this. At the end of the day, they become a shitcoiner just to become a shitcoiner. And it's weird, and it's. Some people are lost in the kayfabe. Some people are lost in the kayfabe, but that doesn't answer for everybody.
Yeah, I think there's individuals like Justin Belcher, for example, who moved down to Mexico with his wife, and he's been promising her to, buy her a yacht. And then Core V30 launches, the price dips. He blames that for why she can't have the yacht. And he sees BIP 110 as a solution to make the price go back up again. And it doesn't.
Or at least it boosts his social capital by being right, about a major shift, a major fork in Bitcoin. People saw BIP 110 as an opportunity. Everybody saw it for the same opportunity or had the same conclusion, came to the same conclusions. But they saw it as an opportunity. And for some, they botched it bigger than others. But it's not the last opportunity. Some of them, it may be the last opportunity that they have in this industry or in podcasts, whatever it is. But for some, it won't be the last. What do you think will be the fallout or the long-term consequences socially, culturally, or people who, not just being on the wrong side of this, not everybody's going to be affected the same, but for the people who really a negative impact, it's just a negative contribution to the whole space through all this. Because that's true on both sides.
I'm not sure what the negative outcomes are going to be. Like I tweeted about how I'm not in favor of the Nuremberg trials, but I know some other people probably are. You know, like Mars, for example, probably really wants to see some Nuremberg trials happen right now. He's pretty salty about getting kicked out of group chats, out of the block campaigns and mute campaigns. I think what's easier to see is the individuals that gained from this. There were some big winners that came out of this. There was CoinJoin Chris, there was Stu TXO. You were a big winner coming out of this. Mr. Hodl went on What Bitcoin Did finally with Wicked. That was pretty wild. And
Garland Hodl,
Rob Hamilton.
Rob, Mike Schmidt, obviously. Brink came out of this ad. Basically, if you were right, you came out of this ad. Very few. There's some exceptions. I know, like, I love them, but I don't know if Shinobi came out ahead. But most people did, especially if they were helpful. Well, somebody who did not come out ahead and was one of the more, I'll actually gain two of the more disappointing, heartbreaking, I don't know, letdowns of this whole thing. Sad stories is Hodl and Guy Swan.
I don't know if Guy Swan's going to lose so much from this. Because I think while he entertained it, I don't think he was ever partook in any of the egregious war crimes. Like, you know, in World War II is afterwards, you're not gonna. There was like a handful of Nazis you couldn't get away with bringing over for Operation Paperclip, right? But Guy Swan's like one of those ones you totally get away with, and nobody would blink an eye. Like, Israel's not going to come and try and kidnap him and try him. And
I just mean more like, you know, people who lost some of their reputation. Like Jimmy Song, maybe he's a better example than Guy. But Jimmy Song and Hogman got to be the two. If you came in here in 2021, 2022, and you got to be on stage at a conference or follow, you know, Jimmy Song or Hodl on a podcast, that's a big deal. That was a huge deal. These guys were highly respected. And I don't think that they're necessarily, you know, at least on Jimmy's side, like a complete joke, right? But they just don't, that cowboy hat doesn't command as much respect as it used to.
Mm-hmm.
And neither does that space helmet on Hodl.
Well, I think there's the individuals, yeah, sure. Like in the short term, I guess there's definitely a separation between those who actually damage their reputation so egregiously that it's going to be difficult or impossible to rehabilitate long term because it's going to stick in people's minds so much. Which I wouldn't say Guy or even Jimmy has. Like, yeah, I think a lot of us were pretty disappointed in the short term in that, but we'll forget about it. And like, you know, Jimmy was on Town Stream. And all it takes for a lot of these guys that kind of rode the middle, you know, and might have had questionable points or were just annoying or, you know, whatever at different points in this whole saga is just whatever the next crisis is to, you know, be on the same team and everybody will be happy again with each other. Now, there's individuals that have actually done things that have been damaging in one way or another in their behavior, you know, and it might have to do with like the intensity that they tried to prevent Gloria from having sex. Might be one of those things. Some of the just, you know, there were a lot of comments that were pretty egregious that I think it's going to be difficult to recover from, and a lot of individuals really made fools of themselves. There were individuals that, you know, were so consistent with it too, like Tomer. Canute's like an example of somebody that, you know, was really obnoxious with all of this, but, you know, he's so silly and goofy, I think people will forgive him. Roger 9000, I think everybody will give him a pass. Everybody will, you know, even though he's been, you know, a big supporter of this nonsense, everybody likes Roger 9000. They'll invite him to the parties in the future and won't even blink an eye about it. Be like, okay, Roger, just give him a pat on the back, you goofball. But then there's individuals like us and Noah Gold.
And I think for me, though, you're right. You're right. And I think for the people who were the most egregious or pissed off the most, people who ran out the worst, you know, I think it's pretty obvious now who they are. But for me, the real that doesn't surprise me. Most of them didn't surprise. Like Fred Krueger didn't surprise me, right? Like I'm not disappointed about that. A lot of these plebs, a lot of these dumbasses, not surprised at all. Some of them were friends, and some of them were, or you know, just people that you did have a certain amount of respect for a long time. And it's not necessarily these people who I'm talking about. It's not necessarily that they did anything egregious or that they were hostile or even ruined their lives or their reputations completely. It's more of the fact that they did like I said, everybody used this as an opportunity, and some people used it as an opportunity, and they exploited it for personal gains. And a lot of people did. But for example, my conscience is clean about it because I did that too. My conscience is clean about it because I was doing it. I was true to how I felt. Sometimes I was maybe a little bit aggressive. Sometimes maybe I was unfair in the way I framed or portrayed people. But I didn't lie about anybody in the sense that I didn't tell any like completely false truths. And if they were technically false, right? Like this is satire. This is an over the top parody. But it's transparently so. You shouldn't take it seriously. Other people were exploiting it and being very dishonest and hypocritical about the fact that they were exploiting it. And I'm disappointed in the people who did that. Didn't even do a good job. They didn't make any good points. They didn't have a good idea. They didn't use this opportunity to platform something they've really been working hard on and they should be proud of. It was an opportunity just for shameless publicity, but without providing, it's in a very dishonest way, misleading, but in no way thought-provoking.
Low effort, low vibe, poor delivery in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
there were some Nazis that had great memes, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I blocked by like almost all of them.
And there were some great points made by people from the Nazi community. And stuff that made you stop and think and consider the long-term implications of things that we took for granted.
Yeah, like Bitcoin Mechanic was talking about like how will plebs be able to afford nodes if AI just keeps on making computer hardware more expensive. And that was a good point.
But at the end of the day, I don't know. I would say it'd be nice to put this behind us. It will not be so easy to do, but you know, whatever it is, what it is, it's over now. At least this saga. But one kind has failed. Pretty much nobody seriously is pretending otherwise. So it's time to move on. But we're going next to a hard fork. I don't know, but like, what else has changed? Have you noticed? A lot of people are saying the security test culture is finally gone. Can you believe that's true?
No, it's definitely not gone, but it definitely has taken a massive hit, and it's looked really, really bad. But you know, the purity tests are a very low effort way to promote yourself without actually having to prove anything. So that's not going away as long as there's individuals that want to gain clout without hardly any effort. They're going to be issuing purity tests, and I mean, you think it's way too early to say purity test culture is over when Corey Clipson's launching Twitter Spaces again. we'll see if that rebounds or not, but I doubt it will. And, or I doubt the purity test will be going away anytime soon. But yeah, one of the most fascinating things I think about this episode is we've only been interested in talking about Bitcoin in the ecosystem the whole time. There's been no talk of anything outside of it, and that has been, you know, a pretty big transition where, you know, so much is happening. The Bitcoin 10 stuff, you know, it was very anticlimactic. It was about as anticlimactic as it could have possibly been for how much noise there was this entire time. And a huge part of that is because people are actually, you know, dealing with or looking at serious things in regards to Bitcoin. And that has me thinking about the future of we're gonna go through some turbulent times, and you know, if you think that the vulnerabilities that have been exposed by the Chinese clankers, you know, the not, as JW Weatherman would call them, the 90s script kiddies, these things are going to be unleashed on the entire web, on all the internet connected devices, on your Alexa at home, on your internet connected refrigerator, on doodads and gizmos galore.
Yeah, it has never been a scarier time to be a pleb. Never been a scarier time. And if you are, I mean, listen, I'm not gonna glaze it. It's gonna, if all you gotta stop making your burgers and looking at pleb slop, because people who spend all day making their burgers looking at pleb slop are not going to survive. And people are going to stop having sympathy for you at this point. I mean, everybody is going to have sympathy for the cold card victims. There's going to be fundraisers, GoFundMe's, Give Send Goes, charity scammers saying that they lost money in cold card. People are going to get scammed on that. But the people are going to show compassion. They are going to give these people grace, because this was the time before you had to care about entropy. But as this goes on, the people who are the victim next, and the people after that, and the people after that, people's sympathy and patience is going to run out. And they're not going to care that you got fucked, because it's hard enough for them to stay ahead of the entropy. So it needs to be a wake-up call. It needs to be a wake-up call. It's time to provide value or level up.
What do you think the optimal way to get maximum entropy is when you're generating seeds? I was discussing this with Juan Galt this week.
You know, they say you got to roll the precision dice hundreds of times. There's talk that scientists are working with Big Bitcoin to smash particles together in the Large Hadron Collider in CERN and pull pure entropy off the God particle after these collisions to create entropy that is quantum resistant. Jeff Booth is doing ayahuasca. That's a good way to get entropy, allegedly. But yeah, I listen to 40 hours per week. We talked about this before. You get macro, philosophy, astrology, optech, mathematics, whatever it is, culture, crash app podcasts. Like, you need entropy in your podcast. You need to constantly be taking in new information that challenges your assumptions, challenges your biases, and makes you think adversarially again. It makes you think the same way you thought about Bitcoin when you first found it. You learn about the truth of money and money printing, and how you start to think critically about everything connected to the fiat money printer. You need to be doing that constantly, or have a really good cloud subscription and pay a ChatGPT and these clankers to do it for you. And if you can't afford to have them do it for you, if you need OpenSats money or whatever, you can't get it. And you need to outsource your compute.
There's been some controversy on how to get actual casino grade dice. Apparently Amazon doesn't have them, according to the group chat I'm in. Now the question,
There's been a run on diet.
like, when you're trying to get maximum entropy for Bitcoin podcasts, like, do you think that additional security is needed, like listening to the podcast in a Faraday cage, for example, so that your brain waves aren't getting scanned actively?
And Faraday, yeah, I mean, it's, some people swear by it. I don't know. I've never tried it. There's also, people talk about listening without using Bluetooth speakers because some of the signal degrades of the podcast when it's being transmitted off a wire. Some people listen to podcasts in their sleep. They think that you get more entropy absorption when you're listening to a podcast and during their REM cycle. But, I'm sure Dr. Jack Cruz has some advice on entropy as well. Have more entropy in your life. He's got more entropy in his gut than he ever did before.
This is an argument against taking antibiotics. Antibiotics kill entropy.
That's a good point. But,
Looking at your diet.
sometimes you don't want entropy. Like, sometimes entropy in the wrong context can be very damaging.
Is this an argument for CrossFit? CrossFit's like the ultimate entropy exercise routine, right?
Right, exactly. It's short bursts of high unfiltered entropy. And those short bursts of entropy they'll either ruin your spine or make you extremely muscular.
Maybe both at the same time. Then you can go and take Gary Leland's peptides.
Yeah, we're Puncher's time chain peptides. The pilot is shot down.
So
the flight over Pennsylvania.
I mean, who would you rather buy peptides from? Puncher, Gary Leland, or BTC Sessions?
I think all of those are good options. I don't have I usually prefer to buy from pleb veteran-owned businesses. So that's why I'd probably go with Punchers. And I believe on Friday, Robert Breedlove made a post. He's been taking peptides for a year now, and he was happy to report that his balls are normal size. They did not thrunk. He does not have little pebble balls from taking a year of peptides. So that was one of my biggest hesitations about experimenting with peptides was the loss of testicular girth. But apparently it is not happening. It's not, plebs aren't getting small balls.
Well, that's good.
Ladies, if you're listeners, if you have a husband, my God, I just wonder what your opinion would be if you woke up and your husband was reporting that his balls were normal size to his hundreds of thousands of followers.
I don't know. How would you feel if your wife was tweeting about the size of her pussy lips or something?
Depends on why I married her, I guess. If I married her because she had famously large pussy lips, then I guess that would probably be, it bears with your spouse is a vector. Everybody's different.
I don't think Breedlove has ever been famous for having large balls. I think he's always been famous for having large biceps. But
I think Robert probably, in his mind, thinks that part of his appeal is having big balls, maybe more metaphorically, but I don't think anybody actually thinks that way, but I think he does probably have that perspective of himself.
Yeah, I can see that. Tone Vase did a breakdown of this, like the content creators with the hero god complex, and maybe he falls into that.
Yeah, megalomaniacs.
He did a really good breakdown. If anybody goes in and looks at his feed, talking about all the different individuals in the categories.
Yeah, it's worth checking out. Actually, it is, tone can be retarded sometimes. A lot of times, actually. But his analysis of the psychology and like the mental mechanics, no pun intended, of the main characters of the plebs and they're pretty spot on, and they're worded pretty accessibly. If you care, most people don't care, but if you do care, just check it out.
Okay, let's just read through it real quick before we get to the founding boost. He said, in my opinion, the only one who could be working with the feds is Luke, the ringleader. Didn't justify why.
He says, I think that's, he was went to the he was working with the FBI after he lost 300 Bitcoin 2 years ago. And he emerged this rolling ocean. This is, of course, just speculation. This is just stuff's a lot came through, whatever you want to call it. And he says, Mechanic, Crater, Bachelor, they were suffering from megalomania, hodl megalomania, which seems like a reasonable assessment for sure.
Especially after watching that stream.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it was part of the risk of kayfabe is getting lost in it. Not being able to appropriately manage the kayfabe and where it mixes with reality.
Crater, Mechanic, Tomer, Helen Guida suffering from megalomania. Canute, Bachelor, Mateo, Big Sean, Asanoa are the useful idiots. Might still realize they're being fooled. Simon Dixon and Jack Cruz are in the everything is a conspiracy, so BIP 110 good, core bad, the end.
Jack's also in megalomania.
Yeah. Fred Krueger gets his own category. How not is actually in all four of the above. Nick Szabo and Beautyon are in the category of, oh no, we have to preemptively comply with future government regulations. We talked about the strategy a while ago, is out complying the government. They seem like they've taken that on full force.
It's very, these days, it's a pretty low bar to outcomply the government. Anybody can do it. Used to be more of a accomplishment.
Bob Burnett is his own category of why the fuck are you still pro BIP 110? You know how retarded it is. You actually understand how Bitcoin works.
Like what I was talking about earlier is the people who they did know better. They should know better. And yet, this is like a lot of Bitcoiners get. It definitely used to be a bigger thing anyway. Frustrated with libertarians because it's like libertarians understand the problem with the central, the Federal Reserve, central banks, state abuse of authority, just the all-encompassing, demoralizing existence of the state, fiat money, the gold standard, and why it was something that used to be the most glazed thing outside of fiat. And yet they would reject Bitcoin. And people used to better. You should know why we need Bitcoin. And they still get it. That's what it kind of feels like to the guys. It's like, you guys know better than this. You guys are getting caught up in something here.
Totally. But yeah, kind of wrapping it up, there's going to be probably a transitionary period where individuals are figuring out like the next thing to get all amped up and excited about. Now that there's a lot of individuals that, will feel very vindicated as a process of this and, want to take their victory laps. And then there's individuals that are going to have, really sore feelings. There's going to be a lot of people that are quiet for some time, trying to, reflect on their decision making or, figure out what their pivot's going to be. And yeah, it's gonna be interesting to watch. But I think we're all kind of in agreement that the next thing after this is probably going to be fighting Wall Street and big Bitcoin on quantum stuff. I think that's what a lot of people are anticipating gearing up for. I don't know if you have any contrary opinions on that, but that seems to be the consensus of what the next.
Now, we can get into that in the next one. I think that the quantum thing is finally, at least from just like a current thing or like a focal point of the situation, I think we learned that we're not even ready for the risks of Chinese ChatGPT. Quantum computers should be way down on our priority list of things to be concerned about as a risk to our Bitcoin. What we should be most concerned about is ourselves. We are the most dangerous risk to our Bitcoin, especially if we don't know how much entropy we have, or we're not rolling dice, or we're not keeping up with our self-custody hygiene. Followed by, clankers from China, clankers from wherever, fishy, whatever. There's a million things that are worse or a bigger threat to your Bitcoin than quantum computers, especially right now. And I hope that the past week and a half really highlighted that in people's minds, and we can focus on things that are more directly in front of us and much higher risk from a probability standpoint.
Absolutely. I think the likelihood of focusing on issues that have a high probability of being issues is low. But yeah, hopefully that can be the case. We'll see. There'll be the next current thing coming out here soon, folks. We're all waiting to see what it's going to be. But yeah, it's been a couple weeks. Appreciate all the boosters that supported the show, and appreciate all of the paid subscribers. But first boost, late stage Honel 6006 sats said, "Sorry about the near crash out, Dick. Hope you all have the best time at Lake Satoshi. Can't wait to hear next week's episode update. Give everyone a hug from me. I'm always open for a call if y'all are around and want to just give me shit. Hopefully I can answer." I love where I live, but I do wish we're a reasonable drive distance to Lake Satoshi. I know Bubba drives his hog all the way across the country to get there, but he's an old retired boomer with nothing better to do. Y'all smoke some extra cigs for me. So this year, Bubba drove his old Cadillac convertible, and he found out that it had a leak when he got to Lake Satoshi, because where he lives in the desert, you don't really have to worry about rain, but it was sure poured when we were out there. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Lake Stage Hodl is kind of anticipating, this Glaze and Glory episode about Lake Satoshi and how awesome it was, like going into before it. And it wasn't the case this year. It wasn't like writing off from this high where, Fundamentals does 12 different podcasts about how great the experience was. It was a pretty wild time.
I missed it. Like I said, I'll be there next year. I was Bitmeyer, 5,420 sats. Crash outs will continue until sovereignty and connection increase. We will not successfully navigate the first turning alone. Nicely, well said.
Yeah, I think that's a good lesson. It's a lot easier when you work together with other people. I guess that's the whole lesson of what the mesh Adele is, what those guys are doing over at Ungovernable Misfits. If you're not familiar with it, they're talking about it all over there all the time. Orange Mark 5,000 sats said the final bear market cleanse is finally upon us. We're shaking loose all the dead weight, the crash outs, the node running drama, so Bitcoin can finally resume its rightful trajectory up only.
Yeah. Can you zoom in a little bit? Because I used to read a lot, 5,000 stats. First turning fuel, let's go. Fuel, baby. Right.
Katie, 2,300 sats is fantastic as always. Thank you, gentlemen. Well, you're welcome. Katie made some awesome pizza. That would have failed a purity test, even though I believe it was sourdough pizza, which I think in today's world is it passes. Sourdough is pretty awesome.
Again, so I missed Katie's pizza. 2,237 sats from Godstaff. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Godstaff.
1,010 sats from Blizza. Been a long time since I listened. Boosted. Where you been, Blizza? Missed you. Thanks for the boost.
And that's a 500 sats. Ha. I like the A comparison. Hey, Neat Creations. He does it. Well, Bugle listeners made it through a cold card fiasco. Me too.
Yeah, I know some that didn't, and it's pretty awful. The whole situation. Definitely had some friends impacted by it, and it's a bummer. Nos Gang 101 Sats says, have a lovely time at Lake Satoshi.
HC on board, thumbs up emojis, and then cottage, I am 200 sats.
I don't know what that is. Some foreign nonsense.
Yeah.
Thank you to our subscribers, Dave, Jolly Roger, Jason. I had a great time hanging out with Jason. Used to read a lot. Lahav. Stardust is coming out to the U.S. here pretty soon. They're going to be touring in September, so keep that on your radar. In Chicago, they're going to be doing a cool show. Shadrack, Boomer, Fundamentals, Sean, Open Mic, and Avi Burr. Appreciate you guys for subscribing. But yeah, I mean, wrapping up the show. What do you got on your horizon for the next week, Rod?
Staying it day by day, and avoiding Chinese clankers. And just breaking news: somebody's in the pleb Discord, and they are now voting. They're having a new democracy the day after they lost the democracy on which chain to hard fork off of. Whatever Core's chain is on September 1st, or it's too. So they're voting. The election results are coming in. The Discord vote. Whatever the Nazi plebs decide, we'll find out which fork they are, or which chain they're forking from. My guess is they're all going to fork from the core chain because none of them are actually using their own chain, but we'll see if they use it when they hard fork it.
We shall see. Anyways, folks, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Bugle Weekly, and we'll catch you soon.
2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. You wanted to help, but all you did was hurt. You wanted to build, but all you did was subvert. You attacked what you loved and pushed your friends away. Poison the well, now can you see how you behaved? Maybe things will get better, maybe some things never do. But sometimes it needs to hurt to learn what is true. Maybe it will get better, or maybe it won't. It's hard to keep it together when you look around and see see what's broke. Whipped into a frenzy, only to have crushed dreams. Lost in the moment, pushed to the extremes. It seemed like a crisis, now where do you go? The cause seemed righteous, now you've got nothing to show. Maybe things will get better, maybe some things never do. But sometimes it needs to hurt to learn what is true. Maybe it will get better, or maybe it won't. It's hard to keep it together when you look around and see what's broke. Got a feeling things are changing, like the tide is rolling in. Maybe all these wrong directions will lead you somewhere good again. Can you hit them all? Calling like a voice across the wind. Or maybe you're just falling for pleb sloppers with a grin. You wanted things how they were, but now the world's gone and changed. You wanna feel so sure, to the point where you became deranged. Maybe things will get better, maybe some things never do. But sometimes it needs to hurt to learn what is true. Maybe it will get better, or maybe it won't. It's hard to keep it together when you look around and see what's broke. Got a feeling things are changing, like the tide is rolling in. Maybe all these wrong directions will lead you somewhere good again. Can you hear tomorrow calling like a voice across the wind? Or maybe you're just falling for pleb sloppers with a grin. Got a feeling things are changing, like the tide is rolling in. Maybe all these wrong directions will lead you somewhere good again. Can you hear tomorrow calling like a voice across the wind? Or maybe you're just falling for pleb sloppers with a grin.